there are 5 items on the consent agenda. The first 2 are minutes from meetings in July. You've got the minutes from the regular meeting on July the 6th, and then the workshop meeting on July the 20th. Item 3 is acceptance of ownership and maintenance for the streets in the Aberfoyle Mill Village development. And as shown in your packet, this is the apartment and townhouse development that was approved several years ago. Limestone Drive and River Drive were already city streets, but as you'll recall, the developers had to connect the 2 ends of Limestone Drive to make a loop. So that is the new section that you see outlined here on the southeast corner of that area. And then there was some road widening on River Drive and Limestone Drive to accommodate on-street parking. So all that is for city acceptance, as well as curb and gutter and street trees and sidewalks. And our city engineer, Jerry Hatton's here to answer any questions, but he and his inspectors have inspected the area and found it to meet city standards. We do have the 1-year warranty that we require. So if you'll accept this tonight for ownership and maintenance, then we can put it on our Powell bill for funding for next year. Item 4 on the consent agenda is adoption of the mission statement and core values. I believe at our June workshop, or maybe it was the July workshop, you adopted the vision statement, and I just omitted the mission statement and core values that you came together on in the retreat back, I believe, in March. So the mission statement is the city of Belmont provides visionary leadership and high-quality city services to create a community of choice for our residents, visitors, and employees. And then I provided the 5 core values that you agreed on at the workshop. So I'd like you to go ahead and follow up on our workshop item and adopting these so that we can get these printed up and continue using these. And then item 5 on the consent agenda, the action is adopting a resolution accepting the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program grant. And this is a grant that we applied for last year and were not successful, and applied for again and were successful. And it will provide the cost of 1 additional police officer that will be dedicated to DWI enforcement. And this covers 100% of the cost of all the personnel and costs, the salary and benefits, as well as vehicle and equipment. So the year 1 value is $102,296. $47,000 of that is for the new police vehicle and all the equipment for that vehicle that we will get to keep. That is paid for by this grant. And then the balance is for the salary and benefits. And you can see in the table, each year in the first 4 years, there's a declining percentage of the federal funding for this grant and a corresponding increase in our funding. So we pay 0% this current year, 15% next year, 30% the year after, 50% the year after that, and then 100% in fiscal year 24-25. So it's a really good deal. These are very competitive. And Bill Carroll with our police department wrote the grant, so he can answer any questions you may have about that. But we figured that certainly we need the position now. We didn't want to include it in the budget because it was contingent on the grant funding, but now that we've received the grant, we want to add that to our position list, and certainly we'll be able to afford to take on those additional costs over the next several years. We'll be able to plan our budget for those. So if you have any questions about any of those items, I'll be happy to answer them, or defer to Jerry or Bill.
Jerry, there were a couple things on the streets that still need to be fixed.
He's got most of the items done on the street sign and we're holding his bond to approve the contract. We only have an opportunity once a month.
Okay, thanks.
And not that it has to do with the streets, but did we check to see that they're going to maintain the piece of property going down to the riverfront?
Yes, and Chris Ray, our code enforcement officer, is here, and he has already notified them in the past, and they've mowed it. It's hairy again, so he's contacted them again to make sure that they keep that maintained.
Adrian, on the additional police officer with the grant, we have to bring on an additional police officer, or can we just repurpose an existing police officer for the DWI purpose?
You would have to add on an additional police officer because they're not going to take funding away from the city that we've already allocated. And it's considered a new project, so the new position is there to strictly focus on the DWI task of it. So you can't just say, oh, we're already paying for this position, can y'all just pay for it? They want to see a new position.
Okay.
Well, while it is a good opportunity to capture this fund, I mean, do we need a full-time, are we lacking DWI person right now, or we need someone to solve the role of DWI? And the reason I ask is, of course, after year 4, you know, we're going to take on the responsibility of that position.
Well, we're definitely going to need the additional manpower and do our projections and working with Shelley and future growth, but also just with one single officer, and we were looking at stats, he had 102 DWIs by himself. So definitely a need, and they're going to pay for it for a while. So we feel like there's definitely a need. I'd have to get you the stats on how many total DWIs we had last year, but over 100 DWIs for one officer is pretty significant. And we also want, you know, that goes, we won the Mother Kids Drunk Driving Award as well for all of our involvement with government highway safety for keeping our streets safe from DWI drivers.
I'm just glad we got the grant. Don't help
Contingent
us.
upon the council's approval. Thank you.
Is the cost in year 2, would it be the 15% of the 55, 290, basically salary benefit?
Yeah, the vehicle, you would just have the upfront cost of the vehicle the first year, which they're paying for, and then from that point on, it's just salary benefits the other.
So worst case scenario, let's say, in 4 years, you didn't want to pick up that officer's position, you could phase it out, you still have the equipment.
Or if you wanted to switch that position off of DWI, and it's not a traffic unit, or whatever you could do that.
Any other questions on consent agenda items? That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Well, we have the consent agenda heard. You want to start a regular meeting?
So you're welcome to roll right into the regular meeting, so you can call it to order. Keep in mind, we do have a recognition and acknowledgement as well. So yes, so you can roll into the meeting. Yes.
All right. You want to do that first?
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then we'll do
Yeah,
the
let's do that.
invocation pledge, and then we'll recognize the Boy Scout troops.
All right, let's do that. Well,
Call the meeting to order.
you're going to do the invocation?
Right, but we got to call the
We
meeting
got
to
to
order.
call the meeting to order. We good? Okay.
Yes, we're now in order.
Yeah, Jim's going to do the invocation. Walter's going to do the pledge. Okay?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together tonight and conduct the business of the city. We ask for your continued blessing that we continue to progress through this pandemic, that we remain strong, that we come together in unity and healing throughout the many difficult issues that are facing this country and the world. And we ask all of this through your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We had a real flagpole instead of Richard. Just-
We got to recognize Group 56 for their project in the Rocky Branch Park. And I was talking to Adrian this morning about Rocky Branch. Says it's a beautiful job down there that the guys have done. So we want to recognize the gentleman here.
get started with the project presentation, I'd like to share some information about you, about why I chose Black and Green project. So, my great grandmother, Zeta Harrison, had recently celebrated her 101st birthday. She was actually born in Belmont and attended high school, which is located nearby the Branch Park. So when I saw the opportunity to do the project team, I couldn't pass it up. The community has a deep history with my family, and this project is especially important. Not only would I be helping the community, but also helping to contribute to my family's legacy. The goal of my project is to help create a better environment for anyone who visits the park. To accomplish this, 256 lines or 2 benches and a bike station. If you weren't already aware, Rocky Ranch Park has various bike trails around the area and is a pretty popular spot among bikers. The bike repair station allows for bikers to be able to quickly and efficiently repair their bikes without having to leave the park. So that's what it was like before. It was pretty bare and there was nothing there. And I thought that there should be a place for people to sit and to enjoy themselves in the park. So the building process. During it, we had to construct the benches by making boxes and cut the wood. So the benches could look good. And it required coordination and lots of leadership, good leadership. There's more. Everyone did their part. Cut the wood, build the boxes for the benches.
These are awesome slides, I'm sorry.
Tell you things that people can see.
I peek out behind you.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay. Let me start. So during it, we had to build the boxes, cut the wood, and we had to cement the whole so we can start a bike station. Here's more what we did. So after. So the first bench, which is one on the bottom right, was put behind the changing room, which is already there. And the bike station was put in between the trash cans and the water fountain that was next to the park sign. The second bench was actually put further along the trail on the pump track so the parents could sit down and watch their kids ride the bikes. Special thanks to Zipstone, City of Belmont, Parks and Recreation, Chick-fil-A, Lowe's, 256, financial supporters, family, and friends. Meals were actually donated by Chick-fil-A, and supplies were donated by Lowe's. Here's the final project. So in this picture we have, on the left, top left, we have Mr. Lucio, who was part of the Trailblazers. Mr. Adelman was part of Boy Scouts of 56. And we have, yes, Jay. Yeah. That's Jay was also part of the Trailblazers. We have a special donation to Belmont Parks and Recreation. We had leftover funds. We raised around $550, and we're going to donate the rest of it to Belmont Parks and Recreation. Thank you. Any questions?
Harrison to complete the project?
Well, to build it for $5 to build it, and it took 2 days. So we did it on Saturday and Sunday. That's kind of
Well, we really appreciate what you did to the park, and I think it's a great job. From what I understand, it's really looking good. And we thank you very much for that, your time. Anybody else have anything?
And I was just told by someone that I was talking to in Charlotte, oh, you need more benches in parks. So it's
Ready, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's a great project. I know all the work that goes into, the pictures probably don't capture all the time that you spent planning and meeting and getting the project done. So, good work.
paper with the police.
Oh, yeah. Always is.
I think we need to give Mr. Harrison, Troop 56, a big hand and round of applause. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
Got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I don't think we have anybody signed up for public comment, Jamie. Mr. Harrison, want to say something?
Thank you for the opportunity for allowing the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for what he did. That's great. All right. So that's the only ones we had signed up for public comments. Okay?
We're 2 hours ahead of last meeting.
Same result.
Yeah.
Does the council mind taking a picture with Mr. Harrison? So we can
Sure.
Why not? Let's do it. Let's do it. All right? We'll let him stand in the back of the more taller than most of us. Where do you want to take it? Right here?
I'll let you.
Can you pull up the project?
I guess just up there in front.
Here we go.
If you want to hold it there.
Can you tell who they're on the bench?
All right, let's actually move you guys over here. You guys are all in the middle of the projector. It's projecting on your faces. Oh, there. All right, Sid, get the back, you're tall. All right, Mark, you should come forward a little bit. Richard, get out a little bit. There you go. All right.
I'm smiling.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. All right, 1, 2, 3. Cheese. All right.
us out?
All right, that'll move us to item 2 on the agenda.
Hope to God.
Approval of the job description for an Assistant Public Works Director position.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a presentation for this, but one of the goals the council has discussed over the last several years is succession planning. As we do have several key department heads and senior staff members that are eligible for retirement over the next several years. We have been working on that internally with some organizational changes and making sure that our staff is prepared as our organization is changing, and we do have folks that are eligible for retirement. You've approved an assistant city engineer and a deputy finance director to help provide coverage for those key departments, as both Jerry and Michelle would likely be retiring in the next several years. You've also approved some changes to the utilities director position, as Chuck Flowers has announced his retirement effective January 1st of 2021, so his last day would be December 30th, the last working day of December. So we want to make sure that as these key staff members retire from the city over the next several years, that we do have a plan in place for some backup to learn our system and to learn our processes and our facilities. We don't have that currently in the Public Works Department. And while David has not announced any retirement plans, he has indicated that it's coming up in the next year or so. So given everything that the Public Works Department touches, given how involved that department is in our operations, I'd like to ask you to create basically a temporary position of Assistant Public Works Director that we can use to assist David in his day-to-day operations, but also to have this person learn everything that we do, from managing a solid waste contract, and as you know, our Waste Pro contract expires in June, so at the end of this fiscal year. And so we will be sending out a request for proposals for solid waste. That is our biggest contract and our most time-consuming vendor, especially here lately. So I'd like to get somebody in here that can help David with all that, and that can oversee or be a part of the solid waste contract, as well as everything else with parks maintenance, street maintenance, keep Belmont beautiful, all the public interaction that Public Works does, to learn from David before David retires. And then the goal would be for that person to then be promoted to the Public Works Director. At that time, we would no longer need the Assistant Public Works Director, so that position would go away. I wish I had brought this to you during the budget workshops, but Chuck had not announced his retirement. David had not shared his plans during the budget time. They announced that at the beginning of July, so that was not on my radar, other than the general need for succession planning. And we had a lot of uncertainty what our finances were going to be this spring. And fortunately, as we went into the budget in March and April, not knowing what it was going to look like, and even into May, we didn't know what our sales tax was going to be. We've now received the sales tax revenue that was generated in March and April and May, and those all came in a lot stronger than what we anticipated and in line with what we initially projected. So I'm much more confident about our city's finances than I was the outlook of COVID-19 and when we started our budget process. So I'm comfortable that we can afford to add this position. It will be split by the general fund and the water and sewer fund, so that will help offset some of the costs. And then we will build it into our budget as David retires. That salary will come off the books, so we'll be able to absorb this. So I do ask that you add this to our authorized staffing for the current year in the position classification. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions for Adrian? I see there's a need for this.
Adrian, let me make a subject. We at one time talked about combining
And I know we have talked about that in some workshops and maybe at a retreat. I think that the role of the city engineer and the role of the public works director are very different. And I think that there are different skill sets. And I think that the amount of work that we have right now with our utility system, our street system, a growing community, those need to be separate jobs. And one thing that I'll bring to you coming forward will be a reorganization and pulling some of the inspections and stormwater from public works and engineering, and have the city engineer and assistant city engineer, when we hire that person, we move into the new building and we kind of get them restarted with what we're doing, and have all that working as an engineering department standing beside the public works department. But I just think the skill sets of an engineer and a public works director are different. Some towns do have a civil engineer as a public works director, and if we wanted to do that, we could, but I would do that in addition to the city engineer. I don't, just having observed, I don't agree with combining those two positions.
Let me put something else out there, or something out there that I'll share with you all. You know, a few years back, we discovered that we could do cost sharing on positions. And we weren't just coming out of the general fund. Found that we could split positions between the water and sewer revenue. And general fund just sort of touched each other. You know, for one cognizant of what everyone else is possibly something to be aware of. When these positions were strictly coming out of the general fund, where it was tighter with growing government. Now that we've got the ability to merge funds, I want to make sure that we're not creating positions that we normally wouldn't create if we didn't have the ability to take those two streams and put them together. My thought process is we need the positions that we need. We don't need to go around and we don't need to. We have the funds available. And so make sure we are doing what we need to do and not doing what we need to do because we can.
And I agree with you on that. And as somebody that has to deal with personnel matters, I don't like having more personnel matters. And the more people you have, the more personnel issues you're going to have. But I think in this case, it is needed. This is a temporary position.
So this is temporary. Is the deputy finance director also temporary?
No,
So that's going to be permanent.
because Michelle does an incredible amount of work, and I'm concerned about if anything were to happen, and take Michelle out of it, just take what we asked the finance director to do. I'm concerned that that's too much for one person, so I want to split the duties for checks and balances, but I don't want that person to burn out. And if something were to happen to the finance director and we didn't have a backup, then we're in trouble. So the utilities department, or utilities billing, customer service area, that's enough work for those ladies to do, and then providing a little bit of backup and help for Michelle. So finance director, we're running a $25 million a year business with one person in finance right now. And so, and that's every financial transaction that we do goes through the finance director. So having that backup is going to be crucial moving forward. I mean, it's easily a two-person job, if not more, but for right now, and I don't anticipate asking for additional finance staff. But I think two people for finance, and you've got the billing folks, that's sufficient for what we're doing.
And then the assistant engineer,
Yes, to help learn from Jerry.
is there a timeline on that, or?
No, sir.
So we're adding all three of these this year?
Yes, those are, so the assistant city engineer and the deputy finance director are funded in the budget.
Is the assistant city engineer go away with the transition to engineer position, or are we going to continue to make the assistant?
That's one that probably could transition into the city engineer, and then make that a temporary position as well.
Well, let me ask you this, we're just spitball, when you had assistant city manager, when you were assistant city manager, you were overseeing parking, rec, and planning and something, right?
So he or she will do whatever is in their wheelhouse. And when we changed the position of assistant city manager, it was to get it away from what my role was, which is pigeonholed into Parks and Rec and planning. Because I wanted to see what skill sets were, that maybe the skill sets in finance, maybe it's in public works or engineering, maybe it's planning or Parks and Rec. And I wanted to assign work based on the skill set of whoever is hired as the assistant city manager. So I'm still doing I'm still doing a lot of what I was doing in my previous role, as well as my role as a city manager. The main thing that I've shed is you allow me to promote Shelley as a planning director. And that was, because I was, as assistant manager, I was also essentially the planning director. So as we're growing, as we're doing more and more, as you're wanting us to do more, it just takes more people. So we can decide to increase the payroll and increase the staff to do the things that you want us to do, or we can just choose not to do as many things. We're getting close to a breaking point with staffing. So these are all a lot of issues that we're discussing. But for the assistant public works director, we really need it for that department, for more oversight in the department, to help David manage that department and to help learn what that department needs to do, so that when David retires, we're not in a bind. I want to be able to have a very smooth transition.
I think that makes sense. I think this position makes sense. But if everybody's getting an assistant, it might be a good time to kind of go back and relook at the overall structure as we move forward, especially
Absolutely.
before we hire a finance person and assistant city manager. It's just a good time to make sure there's not a more efficient way to do it. I know it's dependent on what kind of skill sets you bring in with those people, but maybe the order in which you hire needs to change. Well, I don't know, but something like that. Like if you hire an assistant city manager first, maybe that opens up the door for less on some of the other areas. So,
Decide what skill set you need to cover with people or not. What skills do you bring, what sort of, where do I need them, how else do I
I disagree with that. But.
I disagree with that as well.
You disagree with identifying the need that we have with that person and you want to find the person that can control them?
That's why I asked you to change if we're talking about the assistant city manager, which is.
I'm just talking about.
Yes. No, so for the assistant city manager, I've got flexibility. So I want to hire the best person with the most talent that's the best fit for the city, and then assign either departments to oversee or projects to oversee or work to do based on their skill sets. Instead of just saying, I've identified some needs that we have and some departments that need some help. So I've identified that. I'm hoping that but I don't want to pass on a home run candidate because they may be weak in one area that needs help with the city that I can still do. So I want to hire talented people and train them on the specific work that needs to be done. Now, for something like an assistant city engineer, a deputy finance director, that's a skill set that they're going to have to bring to the table. We will train them on how we do it. But I need somebody that's going to know local government finance and North Carolina finance. So I can't just hire a really talented, awesome person and teach them finance, but that's a skill set that they need to bring to the table on day one. Because frankly, Michelle doesn't have 6 months to train a person. Same thing with an engineer. And it needs to be an engineer that I don't need or Jerry doesn't need aeronautical engineer. We need to have the right kind of engineer that can learn our system. And when Jerry and David and Chuck retire eventually, I mean, they have decades worth of experience with the city, and we can't afford for all that knowledge just to walk out the door. So that's why this succession planning has been really important. And we've had the luxury of time the last couple of years, but I think we're running out of time to really be thoughtful about it and make sure that as this generation of leaders leaves the city, that we've got backup in place for a smooth transition, so there's not that long learning curve.
Yeah, I've spoken with a few minutes about this, because we want to make sure we don't have too many layers, but we want to do the job efficiently. So I think as long as you have that in mind, which I think you do, I think we judgment. The only question I have, if we don't know when David's retiring, how do we judge when we need to have this person in place?
So, I mean, and, so David could retire at any point.
Mm-hmm.
So he has indicated it's probably, well, from now, less than a year and a half now. It could be sooner than that. His big goal is to get into the new building. That is, of course, that's been a goal for all of us. And that is taking longer than we thought. But, once we're in the building, and there are, and I've shared some concerns with some things going on with Public Works that David's going to need some help straightening out. And we've invested a lot in technology and software and being more efficient and more accountable. And so there's a good opportunity there for somebody that can get into the data and analyze it, look at trends, and assign work more efficiently. So there's enough work there, even if David weren't retiring immediately. Well, not immediately, but in the next year or so. But if he is going to retire at some point in 2021, I'd like to have somebody on here now that can learn all that, particularly since we've been doing these 5-year solid waste contracts, and we'll need to start that process probably in January. I know the Environmental Sustainability Board has asked about that and want to be a part of that. So I think this is going to be a more public process than what we've had in the past for solid waste because of the changes in recycling. Our growing issues with yard waste and leaf collection and everything else. It's going to be a lot more technical. So I want somebody in there to help and see that whole process from beginning to end.
If I can use an analogy, it's like the NFL draft. Sometimes you draft best available, like for the city manager, and then sometimes you draft for a specific position of need, like with the engineer or the assistant public works director. So, I wish the timing is a little unfortunate. It would have been nice if we could have factored it into the budget when we were going through that process, but, I think, given, it seems like this will be quite a temporary position from the sound of it, so, I think it's something that's needed to be done.
Are there handbooks and all of that available as well? That gets handed down from employee to employee? Is that something that's going to be included in part?
That's something that we need to do, yes.
I think it's wishful thinking to think that our new public director is going to have the same tenure as David has. So
Right.
chances are maybe he'll be here for one waste management contract. We can't continue to hire somebody a year ahead of everybody forever. So starting to put some processes and procedures. I know that's not how it's been done since Belmont started, but it would be a good way to start buttoning some of those processes up going forward.
And that's part of
It's
what
going to
we
be
need.
really expensive if we don't.
We need to download all of Jerry's information and David's information.
You started yet? Yeah.
That was a point that was made in the infamous efficiency study,
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes.
Anybody have any other questions for Adrian?
I was just gonna say that the training, I guess, that would go on with the new person would probably be a good opportunity to do most of
Yes.
that.
So that we can document it
Right.
and have some standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
You never have enough procedure.
Right.
Anybody want to put that in a form of a motion? Approve the assistant public works director position.
I'll make that motion.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You bet. Next item on the agenda, consider the adoption of an ordinance for demolition for 603 South Central Avenue. Chris Wright?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
An old school?
Oh, even a Braves jersey in there.
Well, they're a Braves fan.
No, you don't.
You're an Atlanta Braves fan, I see the shirt.
I was You can't see it, I just walked by it. I'm not going in. I was just walking by it Sunday, you can't, I mean, it looks bad enough from the sidewalk, but, man. Did you say how much you sold that house for?
So I'm here before you tonight.
60 to 70, just a little
Well, council can vote on a resolution to approve demolition of the property at 603 South Central. We've been working on this property almost 2 years now. Okay, thank you. It goes back to November 2018 when the first letter went out to the property owner requesting an inspection. Nothing was heard. And all the documents were included in the packet that council received. I had to go through the court system to get an administrative search warrant to get in the house. There's a copy of that as well. The report was completed. Of course, it failed. The property owner received a copy of the report, and the report's like 8 to 10 pages long. But the pictures, it's not doing this house justice. It's 10 times worse than what it appears. So there's 2 pictures of the outside. That's actually the back of the house. Very overgrown with brush. Some of the trees need to go. The roof is just about to cave in. Numerous times I fell by and had to pick up the front door out of the yard. It had been secured. It is now. And we've had reports of squatters living in it. I think our police have gone out numerous times for people taking stuff out of the house. Essentially, they were hoarders. No one is living in it, has been living in this property for a while now. At first, after the inspection report was sent to the property owner, there was some communication. And as time went by, the lack of communication, I would contact them, no phone call, no return phone call back. Another letter would be sent, no phone call, please contact me, no phone call. Up until the 12th hour, which was this past weekend, were their talks. So I have a contractor that is ready to go. He can take care of this week. And the way this works is I would bill the property owner, give him 30 days to pay. After those 30 days are up, I take the bill, anything that we do for abatement, take that bill to the court, to the Gaston County tax collector, and they put it on the tax bill for that property. So whenever that house, before that house can be sold, that has to be paid with the property tax.
Before the property can be sold.
Pardon?
Before the property can be sold, because the house is going to be,
Yeah, the house is going to be gone, it's going to be
yeah.
Does that include your time as well? Like, do you guys out?
No, time cannot, it's just anything that we do for abatement. There's 2 years' worth of grass cutting that the city has been, well, the city's contractor has provided, so all that will go on that as well.
And the contractor will remove all the debris and everything?
Yeah, there's,
Yeah.
I bought the property with the contractor, I bought the property with the contractor, and, we made note of what needs to come. There's actually 2 cars in the backyard that you can't access by a tow truck until the contractor cuts some trees out from under it.
Wow. So I went by Sunday, I didn't see any. They must not be visible from the
Oh, you
sun.
can't see.
Mhm.
The one that was in the driveway,
Mhm.
it was towed, the 28th, I think, maybe before that, it's over here. But we towed it, and the thing about the towing,
they come out, the tow company takes the vehicle, impounds it, and to settle that, that's between the tow company and the property owner. The city has no money involved in anything.
And the property owner understands what's going on?
Well, when we talk, she sees no problem with this property. That there's nothing wrong with it. The inside is just fine, we straightened up a little bit.
When was the last time you talked to her?
About a week and a half ago. So they're abreast of what's going on.
And are they present here tonight?
No, sir.
All right.
They did not make the hearing, when the hearing was held.
And they're local, that's correct?
Pardon?
They're local?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's like about an 11-month gap in your timeline. Was that just like letter writing and
No,
phone
we were
calls?
trying to work with her.
Okay.
Because she would say that she's disabled, that she needed some more time, and in good faith, we worked with them so that they would, because there's some stuff in that house that's probably valuable. So we tried to allow them to get in there and get that stuff out. The guy that lived there is disabled. She has a daughter that's a nurse, and with the virus, she's working all the time, so property owner said. So the only time that they had to get out there was on the weekend, so there's been no activity out.
What's going to be done with whatever is in the house with the personal property? I think you mentioned it somewhere in the... What's going to be done with the personal property that's in the house when it's...
It's going to be taken to the landfill. So what the contractor was telling me, he's going to have to take a wall out. They pull all the personal items out first, because you can't take it all to the landfill all at one time, it has to be separated. Then once that's complete, then the house is done. And then the trees, and once the tree's done, I can remove the vehicle from the rear. And I believe that, 15 grand was the, so that's out the door as well, that's everything. And I believe this is the first time that I've had to come to council to tear down in the last 20 years. So all the houses thus far have been voluntary demolition.
It seems like you've made a pretty
So this kind of
valid
traffic.
Well,
contact.
it's not fair to everybody who lives around there.
This is true, and I've had conversations, with the property owners beside, and they know.
All right, well, I'll make a motion. Does anybody have any other thing?
I was just going to agree with you that I drive by it all the time on my way various places, and it stood out for a
2.5
long time.
years of working with people.
Yeah.
What if you lived across the street?
Yeah.
But I'll make a motion to approve the demolition of the structure on 603 South Central Avenue.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Before you leave, we are on track for our friend in Belmont workshop later this month, is that correct? How, has there been any progress there?
Not a thing.
So we have somebody lined up?
And it's, yeah, I've got quotes on that as well, so
All right.
we're ready to go.
Since we don't want to let you have our collections, the Poplar Street property that's in severe situation, where are we stand on that?
All right, so the property owner has cut the limbs and the bushes out of the road, so it will not create a traffic hazard. The ordinance is not specific as to what has to be cut as far as the bushes. He can't get grass to grow because of the big trees, and he likes having the bushes. And he is supposed to be in the process of trimming up the bushes. He said that there's some things that he needs to rip up, so we're working with him on that to get that clarified.
Okay. And what about the property on the corner of Woodrow and Central? this Rose property?
Yes, so they are supposed to be working on that property as well, but I've not seen anything.
That's
So
the
I'm
one I
gonna reach
saw.
back out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And our friends at the card reader,
I love it.
nothing?
So that's probably gonna be another one of those you're gonna have to bring before the council.
What-
The last I talked to them was just a few weeks ago, and they were having problems with their building permit through the county. They've got everything through the city. I think he wanted me to come by and help him fill it out. I didn't want that on him. I didn't want that to be.
How long ago was that when they came, and they had everybody like?
December.
December was our first meeting, I think, or me and Mark's first meeting
Yeah.
was when they came.
So they purchased roofing trusses.
The truss has been sitting out there since December.
But they can't put them on until they get approved from the county.
That's correct.
So I mean, you see them as making good faith efforts, and paperwork is not holding them up because they're not sure how to put it up or installing it.
At this point, I would say that they're stalling. Yes, sir.
We have given them ample opportunity to do exactly what they would do, and without instruction, Chris, we do not do the paperwork for individuals. That's liability to the city, but that's their responsibility. And I think we have been more than patient, even with the code procedures and everything, that it should have been done, but they have just put it off, and there's no progress whatsoever. I think the city has been more than good to try to
Yeah.
assist them, but
Well,
we're seeing nothing.
I think maybe we need to do what we did with the one in North Belmont and say, here's a date certain, you either, you either get it to where it's supposed to be, or if it isn't, the first meeting after that, it's gone. Is that?
I think they've got a lot of paperwork. I mean, you cannot do that. There needs to be a hard stop on that.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like anything's happened since
Yeah.
January.
Okay, motion second, everybody approved,
Yeah, we're good on that.
Way to keep us on track, Charlie.
move on to,
And I will say, Chris does have a list of minimum housing cases, the residential cases that are ready for council consideration. So I don't want to overwhelm you with these.
Mm.
I would assume most of them you're not having regular communication, people aren't working with you. But I do want to start bringing these to you so that we can clear up his backlog on that. And plus, to your point earlier, it's not fair to the people living on the street who do a good job keeping up their properties to have this on their street.
How many do you think you have in the pipeline?
10 to 15?
Really, how many?
Yes, sir.
So we'll bring them to you a couple at a time, so we're not, and you're going to have bigger agendas coming up in the next several months. So I don't want to overwhelm with minimum housing, but
I wouldn't want to let these kind of lag either.
Right.
Yeah.
I can handle a lot.
okay.
I was gonna say, I would like to clear a backlog.
Yeah,
Yeah, and if they're straightforward like this, I'd be fine with just a quick,
Yeah.
just throw them,
maybe divide them into two tranches.
yeah. Yeah, if there's some low hanging fruit where they don't really need to talk about it, and just knock them out.
Anything you've been talking about for 2 years that looks like that.
Thank you.
Because like you say, it's not fair to the neighbors, so I don't know if we stretch out the
Yeah.
process for more their stores too.
You know,
And the property owner down at the car picker, he actually made a mention that if you don't get something done quick, that this president will go out and sit down there. And I'm like, it's in the report.
Yeah. Duly noted.
I mean, I think we've learned in North Belmont, car view, we've got to streamline our.
Yeah.
approach and develop hard stops and stuff. I mean, these two were out of the gates, we kind of felt our way through it.
Right.
So I think we've learned a couple lessons.
There's room to be flexible, but also just have a
Yeah.
regimen.
You can't just keep going through a song and dance for,
Nah, wait till the last minute. I don't think it's fair to us.
The thing is, these two have created a problem for the rest of the ones that come before you, because maybe they do want to fix their stuff up.
Yeah.
It's going to leave a bad taste.
well, I think we're all willing to be reasonable, but, at some point, you just got to have that hard stop. You just do.
No, sir.
Thank you, we will bring those forward to you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. The next section is reports from your boards and committees. You've got the minutes from the July 16th Downtown Belmont Development Board Association and the July 16th Main Street Advisory Board, as well as the July 16th Planning and Zoning Board minutes. Those are for your information. No action is needed on that. Yes, sir.
I have one question about the ZBA.
Yes, sir.
We had no concerts.
Yes, sir.
We funded the concerts. I'm assuming eventually that money will roll over to fund the concerts next year. Is that a good assumption?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when they come to us for next year's funding, they will approach us for funding minus the amount of checks to these concerts.
My understanding is they had deposits on the bands they used, and then they were able to just carry that forward to the 2021 season.
I guess because Mark and I both attend those meetings, I thought my understanding was that the money hadn't actually been given to them yet. The 20, what is it? We gave them 20, was it 20 or 25? I can't.
I don't, 20. Okay.
Okay.
So strike that, so they haven't requested.
Yeah.
I thought,
Well, no,
okay.
it was approved, but some of it was given
But
some
not-
of after
not-
July 1, and they haven't, July 1.
But it's authorized to give them. They
Yeah,
just
it is
haven't, they
authorized.
haven't needed it yet. So my assumption would be that we would just roll it forward.
Because they are just rolling forward with the same, the intent is to do the same lineup that was scheduled for this spring and summer, next spring and summer.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, because I remember they said they booked like all the same bands and
Yeah.
everything, so I would expect that would cost about the same.
Yeah.
Right. So on the manager's report, as I mentioned in one of my weekly reports to you, your August workshop will be Monday, August the 20th at 4 o'clock in this room. And, we will have the consider demolition ordinance for 951 Casey Street. But then we'll have a discussion about affordable housing. And that is one of the items in our parking lot from the retreat. So we will have representatives from Habitat for Humanity of Gaston County who is interested in a specific project, but we'll have a general discussion about affordable housing and seeing what some strategies and practices and policies and tools other towns and counties around the state are doing, and to see if there's anything that the council wants to direct us to work with Habitat on their project, but also in general about affordable housing. So that'll be the primary discussion topic for the workshop. I believe the clerk has reached out to you about scheduling board interviews sometime next week. So if you haven't responded, let me know or let Jamie know so we can get those scheduled. And I believe we'll do that via WebEx. We also need to schedule a workshop on the CIP for August. So we can knock that out either next week or the following week. But just let us know your availability for a workshop with the CIP so that we can all be ready. Yes.
Check it. Hey, is that 24?
Should be 17.
I got 24, 3rd.
17th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it was July 20, so it should be.
August 17th is your workshop at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
17?
August 17th.
Thank you. There are two specific issues that we would have referred to the Water and Sewer Committee, and we still have our committee structure in place, but we've sort of wrapped that into the workshops. And I don't remember who's on the Water and Sewer Committee, but if you want to have a Water and Sewer Committee, or we could just bring that to the board as a whole, as a workshop item. These would, one is a request for city water that does not comply with our water and sewer extension policy. So they want to come to you and ask for an exemption from our policy. And I forget what the other issue is.
Is that a variance, though?
No.
Did I go to- no.
The other one is, a utility right away maintenance. Because they want it to abandon, there was a road that was abandoned, and they want to see if we would abandon a piece of that in order for them to expect the cost.
So we can refer that to a water and sewer committee for those two specific items, or just bring that to a workshop. That was the goal of the workshop. Yeah. So we,
Get away from a lot of extra meetings.
right, yeah. So we'll maybe, okay, good.
2 meetings a month is
It's plenty.
sufficient.
So maybe we can have that on the September workshop agenda. Okay. But I would like to have a separate, I would like to have a standalone CIP workshop. With, I think that's gonna take a little while. So we'll reach out to you to try to schedule that either next week or the following week. I put on here, so in addition to the Governor's Highway Safety Grant, the Planning Department applied for a grant with the Carolina Thread Trail for the Abbey Creek Greenway. You approved the design work to begin, I believe, at the May meeting or the May workshop. We did receive $25,000 from the Carolina Thread Trail to help offset some of that design work. So that's good. So that Abbey Creek Greenway project is progressing. And then, if you'll recall, when the committee that's Belmont residents that's working on the Rocky Branch Park, along with the Trailblazers, came to you several months ago. They asked that you set aside some money in the event that they receive grant funding. Happy to announce that they received $7,500 from the Community Foundation of Gaston County and that Belmont Impact Fund, as well as $38,000 from the Carolina Thread Trail for construction of the improvements to the trail system within Rocky Branch Park.
What's the gap on that?
So that's $45,500 total.
How much more do they need?
They had requested that we set aside $46,000 in this year's budget. So I've got that in capital. You just need your authorization to proceed with that. So they basically have to match for what they said they needed for that. And so now that we've already got some improvements at Rocky Branch Park and places for people to sit and work on their bikes, so thank you. We'll make those trails more accessible to more people through this process for the project with the Trailblazers. So that's good value there. This week, we're anticipating hearing from the governor on COVID-19 and whether we're going to just stay in phase 2 or move to phase 3. They're tracking the numbers. They're not going in the right direction. So we'll continue to follow that guidance. I was hoping that our new building would be finished so that we can no longer meet at TechWorks, but meet in the community room in the new building, because it's a little bit easier to space out there. It looks like there's another 4 weeks or so for that project, so potentially the October council meeting, we can meet in the new building.
Adrian, I walked that building with you after we went on that retreat. There was only one person in there working. Are the people working in there now?
They are working. They've completed the vast majority of the work. The holdup now is the elevator. Seth spent a good amount of time there today. There were several different subcontractors working there today. AT&T connected a phone line that goes to the elevator, the fire alarm, and the areas of rescue assistance. So now we've got to string that line to those 3 areas. Then they can schedule the Otis elevator inspectors to come out and do the inspection of the elevator. And when they pass that, then they can get the Department of Labor to come out and do the inspection so that we can get Sheree Berry's picture in the elevator And our goal is to get that finished before her term expires, so we get her picture in there.
I don't know what I'm gonna do when I don't
Yeah.
see the picture in the elevator.
And your email from Friday stated that you haven't received any update from the contractor since June.
So the project superintendent was sending a weekly report that I would send to you when I got it. He normally sends it about 3 or 4 on Friday. The last one that I received was from June the 26th, so I didn't get anything for the month of July. We did have an on-site meeting last Friday, or really the whole morning, where we did a walkthrough with the contractor, project superintendent, architect, and our USDA finance rep. And they're nearing completion. It's just closing out a project sometimes is hard. And today there were several subcontractors on site. Some days there's 1 or 2, some days there's nobody. They contracted for calendar days, and nobody's been working on the weekends. They don't work holidays. So we're hoping
Doesn't seem
to
like
make it
there's any
finished.
sense of urgency.
There doesn't appear to be. The main lever that we have on them is we control the financing on it. They have to come to us with their pay applications. We'll be paying their June application. We'll probably, now that we're basically finished with the project, other than a few punch list items and some landscaping issues, we'll hold that last payment from them until we're satisfied with it. And then the USDA has its own process to use to close out the loan, and then it will release the retainage. So we've got to figure out how many weather delay days they get, how many days they get for change orders added to their contract, because their contract technically expired on January the 26th. So once we add weather delay days and contract extension days from change orders, that gets them probably to late March, early April. And then you look at liquidated damages of $500 a day from the date of, however, when that new contract end date would be, whenever they are turning over that building to us to occupy. So we've got to figure all that out. We just won't know until they give us more information. It's a public meeting, I'm not gonna, we are communicating.
Is the delay in moving in there causing any problems with the chamber moving into?
We've got tight quarters, but the chamber was able to move into City Hall. Thank you, I meant to bring that up. So the chamber moved into City Hall last week and began operating today. So City Hall is a little bit crowded because so I've totally moved out of my office. I'm 100% working from home now. I actually have been for a while, but I emptied my office, so the chamber's operating out of my office. And then once we move into the new building, they'll take over the area where the utility building was. And so Main Street's operating out of the city council chambers. They'll move into Jamie and Michelle's office when Jamie and Michelle move out, so it's just sort of moving pieces. But it's hindering. The good news is City Hall still closed to the public, so it's not impacting their operations. But once we're able to open the building back and the chamber can have their members and the public come in, ask them for information, we need to make sure everything's tidy and like it should be. But yeah, so moving, and fortunately we figured out how to work from home and we're doing it. Another COVID issue is Jamie's ordered our furniture for the building. There's all these production delays. So we'll have different pieces of furniture in different sections of the building coming in throughout the month of August and September. So I'm hoping that by October we can be in there. So we were getting concerned about being in the new building until COVID hit and we were working from home, and that's working out well for us. really the pressure's on the contractor to finish the job because he's facing these liquidated damages, and it's $500 every day that we're not in that building. But we do need to get back in there at some point. And then a follow-up item from actually public comment from last month's meeting when several residents of the Bellwood Drive neighborhood came to us and were asking you about realigning the intersection with the new traffic signal that's going to be installed at the middle school. I did reach out to Division 12 from NCDOT about this, and the neighbors have reached out to them as well. And I think some of you have been copied on some of the emails back and forth. The Division 12 staff has sent that request to the Raleigh office, I think it's the Congestion Management Office at Central Headquarters of DOT, to ask them to take another look at all of this. They looked at it when we submitted the TIA form 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to ask them to take another look at it. And Mark Stafford, who is the division engineer, had a medical procedure, and so when he's back in the office, we're going to meet. So hopefully that will be sometime in the next week or so. So I did talk to Ronnie Worley from the county commission. He's interested in meeting with us. So we'll schedule a meeting with the city, the county, and the state to see if there's some options for that issue.
No, please.
I talked to Randy Gibbs about this, and we talked about this approach, and it is good as well. Because just doing it as a sounding board, as you know, if we submit this as a project, and I think I'm getting the answer to what I asked you, is that there's some that use the junction, and it was forced like 4 probably times in the project. So now route is the DOT and the pressure going down. Should be up to not agree with this. You know, in one of the parking lots that brought up possibly the city funding some needed road projects. And I talked about the turn lane in front of Stowe Manor. You know, this may be another project we want to look at if we can afford to live on if the DOT won't apply. What looks like a given to me, I'm not an engineer, but it looks like a given to do that. Doesn't necessarily that the DOT and how to do it. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic and then see it our way. I think it's optimistic and not. So when we talk about our CIP or when we're in discussions, and we want to bring back the parking lot out of the city, where we stand financially. We've got some road issues that we probably need to take care of by TIA and for the school, which were pulled away from us. Funding was pulled away from me, is still there, and it's going to be a huge still.
Of course, our other possibility could be that the people who want to develop the property at Riversville would do that, and that would solve. So hopefully that would happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't there a development that might?
So have we received the sketch plan? So we have received an initial plan for development of that Smith property on the corner of South Point and Bellwood that would do that realignment.
What's in our zoning jurisdiction? And because to Richard's point, is that within our jurisdiction or is that in the county?
Bellwood is in the county. I don't know if the Smith property is in the city limits.
Properties in ETJ, they will have to annex into the city based on their major subdivision, and they are showing on the plan of next development.
So stay tuned. I'll let you know when that meeting with DOT and the county is scheduled. So that's one avenue. The development is another one, and maybe some other funding issues that we need to discuss. So just want to let you know that we are following up based on the input that you received and public comment on that. That's all that I have for energy report.
That brings us to other business. Let's start with you, Mark.
Oh, okay. The only thing I've got is, I've just been talking about some of the planning changes we discussed in our last workshop. Generally very favorably received by everyone I talked to, so I think we're making some good progress there. And I know we had given the planning department a lot of action items from the last meeting, so definitely looking forward to working our way through some of those changes.
I'm noticing for the past several months, I've not seen a claw truck, and then moving all that brush by hand, which is not an efficient way to do that, and so when we're looking at contracts coming up, they do not have the proper equipment to do what they're supposed to be doing, so I think we need to find that out, but that should be happening, and that's all good. Well, they were supposed to, but I've not seen it out anywhere, they're hand loading anything out there.
Yeah, I've never seen, I know, because like Winston has taken an interest in garbage trucks lately, so he runs out every time they drive by, and I've never seen a claw truck.
Yeah, they did have one.
I don't have anything, Jim?
The only thing I have is that Mark and I have been working on some, formalizing some rules of procedure for our meetings, and we've gotten to the point where we presented them to Adrian, and he might share them with Parks for some further review, and I think at some point we've got a lot going on, but at some point they'll be presented for us to adopt as a whole, so I'm happy about that, and it's been, it's sort of been a longer process, but I think also to a little extent it worked a little bit in our favor because we've been able to incorporate some of the experiences that we've had over the last few months into some of the rules to sort of, as lessons learned, you might say. So look for that in the upcoming months as well.
Yeah, touch back on waste flow. Our garbage can disappeared. So I went and checked with all the neighbors, based on their records. It turns out it's nowhere to be found. And that's been about 2 months. That's it. So anyway, called waste flow, told them what happened. I said, can't find it. And I said, well, shut in the dark. I said, is it possible that when they bang the garbage can, dump it, and go into the truck? And she said, yeah, that's not uncommon at all. So I said, okay, I think I'm going to truck. So she put in the information and said it would be 5 to 7 days. Okay, so, we make them do, and it occurred to me that in 15 days, so I called back up, spoke to another young lady, and she said, well, truthfully, those things are on back orders, we're having a hard time getting them, and it could be a couple of months. So what we might want to tell them is that it's not uncommon for the driver when they slam the car into the truck, they also deposit the can, and they want to keep the supply on them, because it's difficult to do the trash, and the other one, they can do one for the forever, but it's like, a week window. Kid was in my house, I was surprised to hear that they did not have any toilet supply on hand, particularly since they were aware that their cans could be going to the point for everything else. Touch base, sometimes.
And, yeah, so I saw some emails, so first of all, I'm sorry that's happened, because it shouldn't take 2 months. It shouldn't take 2 months. And we've had several new residents move, request garbage carts, go through the process, we follow up with Waste Pro, and they say, yes, we'll get it to you within a week, and then a month goes by. Of course, you know how much garbage you collect when you're moving. And so they say now that it's a production issue with, because of COVID, they can't get them. But they used to keep a couple dozen at our public works facility for those purposes. And they just,
Couldn't they just carry a list of addresses and then they pick up bagged garbage from that address?
you would think it would be easy.
Yeah, so are all these people having to go to the dump then?
I don't know, but we're following up with them, and it seems like once David gets involved and sends enough emails with lots of capitalization in them and exclamation points, all of a sudden they find a cart and get it.
Yeah.
So I'll ask about your address. Have they replaced yours yet? Okay, I'll ask about yours. And one follow-up, so Chuck had a medical issue today, so he's watching us from home, and he did let me know that they have, Waste Pro has emailed David about the plow truck, and it has been down for a long, long time. So It's, yes, lots of issues there.
I've noticed there's a lot of problems, on our roads and on state-owned roads. We had a couple of there on Broadway, but must be sure you're aware of these coal patch, not very long-term fix. So I've noticed it quite a bit on driving around and dodging a lot of holes, and I don't know where you are addressing that. Seems to be getting more serious.
So we have a contract, a monthly purchase order. I think we budget about $65,000 a year for pothole repair. And so we have a monthly PO for that. And so as we see them, more people report them to us. We put on the list, and David sends it to the contractor. I'll make sure that Dogwood's on that list. Now, we only patch potholes on city streets. So if it's state road, like the big craters on South Main Street by First Presbyterian Church and the AT&T building, that's a state responsibility. And the state is supposed to repair potholes within 3 days if you report it. And there's a state a DOT website that you can report it. I don't know what the status of that is with all their financial problems now, but if you see potholes around town, just let me know or let David know. We'll make sure we put them on the list.
Well, how does that relate to paving? Is that, like just repaving the streets? Is that?
That can be part of the paving program.
Because we,
Obviously,
yeah.
we take care of all that.
Because we had talked about, how ambitious we wanted to be with paving. Is that something we talked about in the CIP workshop?
Yes, and part of that would be the paving
A little
program.
different policy. You send out,
Not on Friday, but I'd ask you to give me some feedback, or Jerry feedback on what you want to get resurfaced.
we got several options of how to fix our streets. And what we have been doing is using the pavement condition survey number, and all the streets under 20 and now under 30. But I took a look at the next batch. I drove there from the street, and I thought, look, this is not as bad as other streets like Germany. And in particular, I'm more concerned about the busy streets that you find yourself on every day as you drive around town. So I put together a memo with Adrian, and I said, we really have two choices here. One is to just use it by the numbers, or one is to look at the streets without how much traffic they have on them, whether they're commercial streets, or residential streets, and rideability factor. So when you get that memo, look at it, start thinking about it. The second choice requires input from people, and not just like public works guys, but other you folks as well. You drive on the streets as much as I am. Some of the streets that come out with a very blue rating, actually are just bumpy as blue. And some of the streets that have the lower numbers, which is elevated cracks, that have much cracks in them, but they're smooth. So I think it's a matter of picking streets, not just by the Ron?
I was just gonna bring up that I think we should do another $1 million paving program. I'm sorry, I wanted to bring up that I wanted to do another $1 million paving program over 5 years. We're looking into that, which I've mentioned a few times, so I think now would be a good time to discuss that. And more on a pessimistic side, I think the issues with waste management, Waste Pro, are going to continue to get worse, and the cost is going to continue to go up, and we're not going to have a whole lot to do with this. I think we're going to be shocked when we start seeing some of the quotes for the types of services that we're going to be requesting, and so I just I know we all have real high expectations, and we feel like we're in the driver's seat in a lot of these situations. And this is gonna be a humbling experience. That's, I think when Adrian mentioned earlier that we're gonna have a lot of public comment, I mean, we've seen Gastonia do away with a large part of their recycling because of cost. Whole towns do away with recycling altogether. We're gonna have to start balancing, maybe some moral issues with financial issues. It's gonna get real tricky, so, I just wanted to kind of put that in the back of everybody's head. But that's it for me. Thank you.
I think you're spot on that. We got a really good deal the last Waste Pro with yard debris and leaf collection. We will not get that deal again, I can assure you.
I was sort of tipped off by the fact that they came here about a year ago and tried to change the deal for without any additional
Force
consideration
majeure.
from us. So that tells me that they think that we got a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and our recycling is a lot lower than what most towns pay for, and we still have the single stream, throw it in the thing. We don't have contamination fees. All that's gonna change. So and the Environmental Sustainability Board wants to have a seat at the table on that, so we'll invite them for comment on what we wanna look at, but we will have to make some tough choices on what solid waste services look like moving forward. We don't have to solve that tonight, that's the good news. We've got our current contract, and if you'll recall, when we used to do waste management, we had a lot of customer service complaints about waste management, and Waste Pro started off great, and their customer service was declined. There are a lot of new vendors in the field now, which is good, but it's just a process that we'll go through. We'll do that in the spring.
Thank you. All right, we're going to be going into closed session.
Need a motion.
A motion to go into closed session and to include Shelley DeHart and our outside counsel, Pat Flanagan. This is for attorney consultation.
Right, so I need to state the reason why we're going into closed. I move that we go into closed session to discuss pending litigation and to include our planning director, Shelley DeHart, and outside counsel.
Thank you.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're in closed session.